Hi everyone. I've kind of fallen behind on my Being Stoic series that I was doing. My Being Stoic series of videos based on the Discourses of Epictetus. Been using this Heritage Press edition that's got really cool illustrations in it. And going through sort of chapter by chapter and doing just sort of my take on each of the chapters of the Discourses. If you're not familiar with the Discourses, these were written down around the year 105 of the Common Era AD, and they were written down by the pupil of Epictetus, so they're basically lecture notes that Arian, one of his pupils, wrote down. So, I just find them really useful and really interesting to sort of engage with on a modern level, sort of how I relate each discourse to my life. And so I really want to keep this series up. I've just kind of fallen behind because I started a new job a while back and been sort of swept up in that. And but I'm really going to try to get better and getting these uploaded more frequently. So where we were last time, or where we are now, is actually we're up to chapter 23. And chapter 23 is actually called Against Epicurus. So what it is basically it's a discourse around Epicureanism was a rival philosophy at the time. So, just to sort of revisit the idea of philosophy from the ancient times, it's mentioned in several of the previous videos, but especially in ancient Greece and Rome, philosophy really dealt with how to live a good life. It was really a practical life sort of life lessons, I guess you could say. And so Epicureanism was a rival sort of philosophy school of thought. And so this relatively short little discourse discusses some aspects of Epicureanism. He actually states that Epicurus actually recommends not having children due to the fact, they cause so much trouble, and also not to enter politics, just because of the way politicians are and the things that politicians have to do, these sort of compromises and things like that. Epicurus thinks the way to a good life is to not have either of those things. And Epictetus actually argues the opposite, which is maybe a little confusing, because Stoicism, I think, a lot of times has this reputation of being a philosophy of detachment. And that is the case to a degree. Stoicism does actually, and it's repeated throughout these discourses, how we need to understand what is external to our life and what is not. So what is in our control versus what is not in our control. And other people are always outside of our control. And these are even other people that we love or might love very much, like our children. Their lives are largely outside of our control. They are outside of our control. So if we base our happiness in our inner self, our inner tranquility, and if we base our virtue in our children, then we have actually misplaced that. We have misplaced that inner sense of well-being and our virtue, because our children are an external thing. Our children may go away and leave, and you never see them again. So if you've based your whole sort of being around them, then you would have lost that. They could die, and if they die, you would lose it as well. So the only lasting source of inner sense of well-being, inner tranquility, and virtue for each person is themselves and what they cultivate within themselves. So, this is a stereotype of Stoicism of sort of detachment, but really one of the primary virtues of living, according to it's repeated throughout Epictetus and through other Stoic works that I've read as well, is sort of this. It's good for you. It's good for your virtue, and it's good for your sense of being in your way of life, to be engaged with society. So to be engaged with politics is actually a good thing, and to be engaged with the lives of people that you love, such as with your children, is also a good thing. But that balance is actually learning what if that's external to you and what if that's internal. So, to me, it would be the height of inner tranquility to be able to enter some arena like politics and still keep my inner tranquility, because I actually have a difficult time sometimes just watching the news and keeping my inner tranquility. So that's the challenge of Stoicism, though, it's a lifelong effort to cultivate this sense of self, meaning finding meaning and finding and cultivating that which is good over that which you have control, which is ultimately only yourself, and yet engagement with the wider world. So that's what I took away from that particular discourse. I think I will leave it at that. Our next discourse will be chapter 24. I was just going to look up what the title of that is. How one should contend against difficulties. How one should contend against difficulties. So that should be interesting. I hope to get these out more regularly than I have been. I really would like to start this weekly if I can. I'm not sure that's going to be possible, but more or less every week I'd like to do another chapter. We are getting kind of close to the end of book 1, but there are 4 books in the Discourses. So quite a lot to go over yet. So until next time, take care. Bye.